Hey Guru Nation, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, it's theclinicaltrialsguru.com. So first of all, thank you very much for watching. If you're on YouTube, I'm actually going to be referring to one of my articles that I wrote. So I'll put the link underneath the YouTube video, but you can just go to theclinicalscoop.com and you should find it there. It's about GCP, okay? And if you're on my Clinical Trials Guru blog, the link will be there. So you should read that article after watching this video, but I wanted to go through that article with you and make a video for it. So a couple months ago, I interviewed Kristen Mori from BioClinica. She's actually their global head of risk-based monitoring, and we talked about changes to the ICH GCP guidelines that have been revised in 2016. So now, here we are in March 2017, they've been implemented, okay? And I'm just going to go through maybe 5-6 minutes, talk about some of the most important changes for us researchers, especially us research sites, us investigators, us as CRAs, and then CROs and sponsors, although I'm sure the CROs and sponsors are pretty up to date on this stuff because they have to be, right? So some of the enhancements include the obvious technological innovations like eSource, electronic record retention, virtual workspaces. So that's really, that needed to be addressed since the last GCP guideline revisions, okay? But seems like the theme of this update, and again, you could watch like an hour-long interview with Kristen Mori that I did. Seems like the theme, the overarching theme of this revision has really been the shift towards more of a centralized monitoring for clinical trials. Not only is centralized monitoring an available strategy, but it's actually the encouraged strategy. And I should take that back. A risk-based monitoring, which may or may not use centralized monitoring. Normally they use a great deal of centralized monitoring combined with traditional monitoring. And so risk-based monitoring basically takes a look at the risk profile for any aspect of the clinical trial. Okay, so if a sponsor is outsourcing a clinical trial to the CRO, which, by the way, the FDA in this revision, in these guidelines, they're putting a lot more of their responsibilities on the sponsors. So even if you're a sponsor and you outsource your trial to a CRO, you still need to be informed of what's going on, and you're responsible for the study, especially the risk, all right, managing the risk of the study and being proactive about the risk. So study participants don't get injured, which is obviously paramount to everyone in the industry, but also to make sure that things such as data inconsistencies, missing data, protocol deviations, and even fraud can be detected and addressed immediately rather than the FDA finding out about these things years later, and then maybe having the sponsor redo the trial, or just not approving the trial. So that's the whole idea behind this risk-based approach. Now, what does that mean practically speaking? What does that mean for the research sites? Well, you might be seeing your monitor less. You might. But you're going to still be doing a lot more work with them. So get ready to scan a lot of documents. We use a product called Intralinks Via. It's a virtual workspace where we put our documents in the cloud, then the monitor can actually look at it. But many CROs have their own platforms, right? Some of them use Intralinks Via, others use their own. So get used to a lot more scanning, a lot more remote monitoring visits. You'll still have your traditional monitoring visits, but they may be fewer and farther between. And in between, you're going to have centralized monitoring. Now, what does this mean for you as an investigator? Nothing new, okay? As an investigator, you still have full responsibility of the conduct of the trial at your site. In fact, that's one of the now formalized revisions to the GCP, which sponsors have always been holding investigators fully responsible, but now it's formally documented in this new guidance. So if you're an investigator and you outsource, let's say, patient recruitment to a third party, you still need to make sure that they're fully trained on the aspects of what they're doing, so inclusion exclusion criteria, or let's say you're outsourcing a medical procedure to a vendor like an MRI facility or another facility where there's a procedure that the patient has to go off-site, outside of your site. Okay, that third party still needs to follow GCP. That third party still needs to follow ALCOA guidelines, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate, meaning they can't rubber stamp things. They need to actually sign and date in real time. So that's a common finding when research sites outsource certain procedures to vendors that are not used to doing research. They're not necessarily familiar with the ALCOA principles of documenting. All right. So, and by the way, ALCOA is also included formally in these guidelines, believe it or not. So I wrote about that there. For CRAs, expect a lot more detailed reports, because one of the practical changes that's going to affect you as a CRA is the fact that now there needs to be a monitoring plan. Okay, and the monitoring plan doesn't necessarily have to be a separate document, although most will have a separate document for it, but that monitoring plan will be susceptible to an FDA audit. All right, and in that monitoring plan, they have the monitoring strategy, and that might even be broken down into subcomponents, like your sites. Let's say you're a monitor and you have 6 sites for a study. You may have a different monitoring plan for each site based on their risk profile. And so just a lot more documentation, and now the sponsors need to see these monitoring reports. So in the past, they could request them, but they didn't do it so often. Now they're having to look at all of them because they have to make sure they're responsible. Now the FDA is letting them know through this revision that the sponsors are responsible, just like the PI, for the conduct of the trial at all of their sites. Okay, so they can't just outsource that monitoring reports to the CROs and say, okay, you guys take care of it. No, they have to look at them. They probably have to document the fact that they reviewed the reports. So a lot more work for the CRAs, a lot more detailed reports. Sorry to tell you that. I've actually seen that firsthand. I'm a contract CRA. I picked up a few contracts, and the reports are very detailed. And that's really it. I mean, that's the practical changes. You can go read the full article on theclinicalscoop.com. The link should be underneath the video or in the blog post somewhere, and then you can also watch on that page within that same blog post the interview I had with Kristen Mori, which is about 26 minutes, so it's not 40 minutes, but it's a good amount of it's a good enough interview to where you can get like someone else's perspective, an executive from a really large stakeholder in this industry, BioClinica, get her opinion on this. Okay, she's in charge of risk-based monitoring. So thank you all for watching, and let me know if you have questions, and let's see how these new guidelines affect us. All right, talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.